day in the village square. It wasn't a scream of fear, it was a scream of something that have gone very wrong. The scream came from Chief Ozo's compound on a bright Thursday morning while the elders were gathering to settle the matter of the hidden shell found behind David's house. The village square was full, elders in white, children with chalked faces, women holding their wrappers. In the center stood Mama David, an aged woman with golden brown skin that was glowing faintly even in daylight. She was wrapped in a sharp green wrapper covered in river coral pattern, and she wore a red coral necklace while her hair was plaited into a regal crown. She looked very calm, too calm. The elders had just asked her a very simple question. Is this shell yours? And what's inside it? And then the air shifted. The clouds were dimming, but there was no wind. Everyone saw it. Her eyes turned fully black. Her feet melted. Not like a person fainting or falling. They were melting like ice over a fire. The green wrapper was floating upward as her body began to dissolve into salt, then into foam, then into mist. And just like that, she vanished. Gone. No smoke, no noise, no river. Only a puddle of water in the red sand. Silence fell. Someone dropped their walking stick. A child started crying. One of the elders whispered, "This is not a human matter again, no." Ha! 7 months earlier, the sun was rising gently over the village of Ike Iloro. The sky looked like it had been washed clean overnight, and birds were singing while flowers had bloomed where no one planted them. That morning, Ada was standing in front of her dressing mirror, draped in her white lace, with gold stones that were shimmering like river pebbles. Her gele was already packed neatly on a table, and her wedding shoes were untouched in their boxes. She should have been happy. It was her wedding day. She had been waiting for this beautiful day. From the moment David walked into her life, tall and warm, like evening light, everything was feeling steady again. Her life had been full of unstable stories. A mother who died too young, an uncle who tried to marry her off at 16, and a church that called her cursed for not marrying by 25 years old. David came and changed that. He wasn't just a man. He was a proof that God hadn't forgotten her. The compound was buzzing with excitement. Aunties were arranging chairs, uncles were supervising the food, and children were running around with ribbons in their hair. Everyone was smiling, even Mama David, the groom's mother, and that smile, it wasn't quite right. The first time Ada met her, she felt it, a calm that wasn't warm, a softness that wasn't safe. Mama David was beautiful in a way that never faded. Her skin was glowing like it had never touched harm. Her eyes, light brown, almost golden, were sparkling even in the shadows. She was walking slowly, like water that had nowhere to rush to. Everyone said she was graceful, but that morning, as Ada was bending to adjust her lace in the mirror, she saw something behind her. A tail, shimmering blue, like silk, was slithering past the door in her reflection. She turned quickly. Nothing. Just her cousin tying gele. Ada swallowed hard. She didn't say anything, but the beauty of the morning had cracked, and something cold was crawling through it. The wedding was going on like a dream. The drums, the dancing, the food. David was looking at her like she was his whole world. Mama David hugged her gently and whispered, "Welcome home, Ada. I have been waiting for you." But something was itching in Ada's heart. It started after they moved into the house, a big green bungalow near the edge of the village. The house had been gifted to them by David's mother, her mother-in-law. It was sitting close to the river. "I like the sound of water," Mama David had said. "It helps me sleep." At night, Ada was beginning to hear things, not loud things, soft, a song. It would start around 2 a.m., faint like someone was humming gently inside the water. She thought it was just the river. But one night, she got up to pee and she saw the song. It was coming from Mama David's room. The door was open slightly. Candlelight was flickering. Mama David was sitting inside a large basin filled with water. Her eyes were closed. Her body was rocking gently as if the water was holding her. And her lower body, Ada saw things. Not the clothes, not a trick of light. Scales, real ones, glistening, moving, alive. She didn't scream. She couldn't. She just walked backward slowly and went back to her bed. She didn't tell David, didn't sleep either. And by morning, Mama David was in the kitchen smiling and cooking white soup. Ha! 4 weeks later, Ada was trying to tell David what she was seeing. Every morning, she would wake up with new stories. David, your mother was walking on water yesterday. I saw her through the kitchen window. David was laughing. Ha, Ada. You need rest. You're seeing so many things. David, she talks to the fish in the river. They follow her when she baths. David was getting annoyed. My mother is a godly woman. Stop saying these things. But Ada wasn't stopping. She was collecting everything. She found scales in the bathroom after Mama David bathed. She found seashells arranged in strange patterns in the garden. She noticed that flowers were dying wherever Mama David walked, but water plants were growing thicker. David was defending his mother every time. She raised me alone, he would say. She worked 3 jobs to send me to school. She prayed over me every night. You don't know her like I know her. Ada was getting frustrated, but she was only getting scared because the more she watched, the more she was seeing things, and Mama David was watching her back. Ada got pregnant 6 weeks after the wedding, and that was when everything was changing. The first time was a dream. Every night, she was drowning. She would see a baby floating in a river, and long wet arms covered in bracelets made of shell and bone were pulling it away. The second sign was the morning sickness that wasn't normal. She was vomiting water, not food, not bile, clear salty water. David was taking her to the clinic, but the doctor said everything was fine. Some women have unusual symptoms, the doctor said, but Ada knew this wasn't normal. The third sign was Mama David's sudden interest. Before the pregnancy, she was polite but distant. Now, she was always around. She was bringing Ada special soup. She was massaging Ada's feet with oils that smelled like the sea. She was singing lullabies in languages Ada didn't recognize. And every time she touched Ada's belly, the baby was moving violently. The baby loves me already, Mama David would say smiling. But Ada was feeling like the baby was trying to escape. One evening, Ada was walking to the market when she met Mama Ngozi, an old woman who sold palm oil. Mama Ngozi was looking at her belly and shaking her head. My daughter, be very careful, oh, she whispered. Careful of what, Mama? That woman you married into. She is not like us. Ada's heart was beating fast. What do you mean? My late husband used to fish in that river. He told me stories about a woman who would come at midnight, singing to the fish. The fish would follow her like they were hypnotized. One night, he saw her clearly. Mama Ngozi was lowering her voice. She had a tail, my daughter, a real tail, and she was pregnant with a human man's child. Ha! Ada was feeling dizzy. When was this? 28 years ago, around the time that David was born. That night, Ada was crying when she told David everything. She told him about the scales, the singing, the dreams, and what Mama Ngozi said. David was getting angry. You are listening to village gossip now, right? My mother is not whatever you are thinking. Not a mermaid. Ada, she is a human being who raised me with so much love. But Ada wasn't backing down. Then explain the basin of water. Explain the things I saw. Explain why I'm vomiting seawater. David was standing up, pacing. You are stressed. Pregnancy is making you imagine things. I am not imagining anything. They were fighting until midnight, and that was when they heard it, the singing. But this time, it wasn't soft, It was loud, clear, and it was coming from outside. They rushed to the window and looked. Mama David was standing in the river, waist deep in water. She was glowing like moonlight, and around her, hundreds of fish were swimming in circles. She was singing to them in a voice that sounded like wind and waves. David was staring. His mouth was open. That can't be real, right? He whispered. But it was real. And they were both watching it. The next morning, David was quiet during breakfast. Mama David was acting normal, serving them yam and plantain with pepper sauce. But David was studying her face like he was seeing her for the first time. After she left for the market, he turned to Ada. Last night, what we saw, it was real, wasn't it? Ada nodded. David was putting his head in his hand. I don't understand. She's been my mother for 28 years. How is this even possible? That evening, David decided to confront her. They were all sitting in the parlor after dinner. David cleared his throat. Mama, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the simple truth. Mama David was looking at him calmly, but Ada noticed her hands were shaking slightly. What is it, my son? Are you human, Mama? The question was hanging in the air like smoke. Mama David was quiet for a very long time. Then she started laughing. Not a normal laugh. A sound like water rushing over rocks. What kind of question is that, David? Of course I am human. I gave birth to you now, didn't I? But David wasn't accepting that answer. Then explain what Ada had been seeing. Explain what we saw last night by the river. Mama David's face was changing. The warmth was disappearing from her eyes. Your wife has been seeing things because she's not strong enough for this family. I told you to marry Amara from the river village, but you chose this dry girl instead. Ada was feeling cold suddenly. What do you mean by dry girl, Mama? Mama David was looking at her directly now, and her eyes were turning darker. Some women are born of the water. Others are born of the land. Water always wins, my dear. David was standing up. Mama, you are scaring me. Just tell us the truth. What are you? Mama David was also standing, and as she stood, water was beginning to drip from her wrapper onto the floor. I am your mother, David. That's all that matters. And that baby your wife is carrying belongs to me. What do you mean belongs to you? Ada was asking, her voice shaking. Every firstborn in this family returns to the river. It's been the way for generations. That's how I got David. And that's how you will give me your child. David was stepping backward. You got me from the river, Mama. What are you talking about? And that was when Mama David told them everything. 28 years ago, I was barren, Mama David was saying, and her voice was becoming deeper, like it was echoing from underwater. I was married to David's father, but years after years, no child was coming. People were mocking me. Some were saying I was cursed. She was walking towards them, and with each step, more water was dripping from her clothes. One night, I went to the river to drown myself. I couldn't bear the shame anymore. Ada was holding David's hand tightly. But when I entered the water, I didn't die. Instead, I heard a voice. The river goddess was calling me. Mama, please stop now, David was whispering. But she wasn't stopping. She told me she would give me a son. But the price was that I have to save her. I have to become like her. And every firstborn of my bloodline will return to the water. You made a deal with a river goddess? Ada was shaking. I made a deal to have you, David. And 9 months later, you were born. But the change in me had already started. She was lifting her wrapper slightly, and they could see her legs were becoming scaly and translucent. I've been hiding it for years, living between two worlds. But when David married you, instead of a river child, the goddess became very angry. David was shaking his head. This can't be true. This can't be real. Your wife's baby must return to the water, or the curse will destroy our entire bloodline. Ada was standing up, protecting her belly. My baby is not going anywhere. Mama David was smiling, but it wasn't a kind smile anymore. We'll see about that, my dear. The next 3 weeks were like living in a nightmare. Ada was having terrible dreams every night. She was seeing her baby being pulled away by hands made of water. She was seeing Mama David standing over her bed, chanting in strange languages, and every morning she was waking up weaker. David was trying to protect her, but he didn't know how. He was taking her to different doctors, but they all said the baby was fine. But Ada was knowing something was wrong. The baby wasn't moving as much. Her belly was feeling cold to the touch. And every time David looked at her, Ada was feeling like something was being drained from her. One Tuesday morning, Ada woke up and knew something was different. She wasn't feeling the baby anymore. She was shaking David awake. Something is wrong. I can't feel the baby moving. They rushed the hospital. The doctor was doing an ultrasound and his face was becoming confused. He was calling another doctor, then another doctor. They were all looking at the screen and shaking their head. Finally, the head doctor turned to them. I'm sorry, but there is no baby here. Ada was screaming. What do you mean no baby? I am 5 months pregnant. Ma'am, your womb is empty. It's like the baby was never there. But Ada hadn't miscarried. There was no bleeding, no pain. The baby had just disappeared and Ada fainted. For weeks after losing the baby, Ada was too broken to do anything. She wasn't quite eating. She wasn't sleeping. She was just lying in bed and crying. David was devastated too, but he was also angry. He was beginning to suspect his mother, but he didn't want to believe it. One night, Ada was walking around the compound at midnight. Unable to sleep, she was passing behind the house when she heard something, a baby crying. Faint but clear. She was following the sound and it was leading her to a big rock behind the kitchen. The crying was coming from underground. The next morning, she told David, there is something buried behind the house. I can hear a baby crying. David thought she was going mad with grief, but that night, he heard it too. They decided to dig. At midnight, with just a small flashlight, they were digging behind the rock. 3 feet down, they found it, a large white shell, smooth and perfect. Inside the shell was a small red cloth, the same cloth Ada had tied around her belly for the protection during pregnancy, but the cloth was wet and it was moving slightly like something alive was inside it. Ada was shaking. Our baby is in there. David was afraid to touch it. They took the shell to Pastor Johnson, the most powerful man of God in the village. Pastor Johnson prayed over the shell for 3 days. On the 3rd day, the shell cracked open. Inside was not a baby. It was water. But in the water, they could see the shadow of a child, moving like it was swimming. Pastor Johnson was shaking his head. This child's soul had been trapped between worlds. Someone with water spirit has stolen it. Can you save it? Ada was crying. We need to confront whoever did this, and they need to willingly release the child. The next morning, the village elders were called. They came to David's house and demanded that Mama David answer questions about the shell. She arrived dressed in deep green, wearing her red coral necklace, with eyes as calm as still water. But when she saw the cracked shell, her calmness was disappearing. Where did you find that? She asked. Chief Ozo spoke. Mama David, we need you to tell us the truth about this shell and this missing baby. She was quiet for a long time. Then she looked at Ada with pure hatred. That stubborn girl refused to give birth in the river. She tried to steal what belonged to the goddess. So you took the baby? David was asking, his voice breaking. I saved our bloodline. If the goddess doesn't get what she's owed, she will destroy everyone connected to me. The elders were murmuring among themselves. Pastor Johnson stepped forward. Mama David, in the name of Jesus, release this child's soul back to his mother. I can't, she was saying. The goddess has it now. Only she can release it. Then call your goddess, Pastor Johnson said firmly. And that was when everything was changing. Mama David was beginning to shake. Her legs were twisting. Her skin was becoming translucent. Right there, in front of everyone, her feet were melting into things. People were screaming and running, but Pastor Johnson wasn't moving. He was praying loudly, commanding every evil spirit to leave. Mama David was letting out a long, painful wail that was echoing like waves crashing. And then she was beginning to dissolve into salt, into foam, into mist. But as she disappeared, she was screaming, "The baby will never be yours. The river keeps what it takes." And then she was gone. Only a puddle of water remained. For months after Mama David disappeared, Ada was inconsolable. Even though the evil was gone, her baby was still lost. David was blaming himself. "I should have believed you from the beginning," he would say every day. They left the house by the river and moved to Ada's family compound in town. Ada was going to different churches, trying to find healing. Some pastors said the baby was gone forever. Others said God could still work a miracle. Pastor Johnson was the one who gave them hope. "Fast and pray for 40 days, he told them. "God is greater than any river goddess." So they did. For 40 days, they were eating once a day and praying 3 times daily. On the 40th day, something was changing in Ada. She was feeling different, hopeful, like life was returning to her womb. 2 weeks later, she discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was completely different. No nightmares, no vomiting seawater, no cold belly. The baby was active and strong, and every ultrasound showed a healthy, growing child. 9 months later, Ada gave birth to a baby girl. The delivery was smooth and natural. The baby came out crying loudly, full of life and strength. They named her Olamma, good child. But when Olamma was 3 years old, something beautiful happened. Ada was feeding her when the baby stopped and looked directly at her mother. And in a clear voice, like she was much older, Olamma said, "Mama, I saw the water woman, but Jesus brought me back to you." Ada was crying with joy. The nurses said babies couldn't talk that early, but Ada knew it was God's way of confirming that her child was truly hers. As Olamma grew, she was nothing like what Mama David had predicted. She was afraid of deep water. She preferred to play on dry lands. She loved singing hymns and would often say she wanted to be a pastor when she grew up. And whenever they passed by rivers, she would hold her mother's hand tightly and say, "Mama, God saved me from the water." 5 years later, Ada and David had 2 more children, both healthy boys who loved the land more than water. The house by the river was abandoned and eventually collapsed. People say strange things still happen there at night, but no one was brave enough to investigate. David became a different man. After everything that happened, he was no longer quick to defend people without investigating the truth first. He learned to pray before making major decisions, and he never stopped apologizing to Ada for not believing her when she needed him most. Ada became a counselor for young women about to get married. Her advice was always the same. Pray about your spouse's family before you say "I do." Ask God to reveal anything hidden, and don't ignore the red flags just because you are in love. She would tell them her story, and every time the women would be shocked but grateful. Marriage is not just about 2 people, she would say. You are joining families, histories, and sometimes spiritual battles you know nothing about. Olamma grew up knowing her testimony. On her 10th birthday, she wrote in her diary, "My grandmother tried to give me to the river, but God said I belong to him. I will never forget that he fought for me before I was even born. When I grow up, I will help other children who are trapped between worlds." And she did. Olamma became a pediatric nurse who specialized in caring for children from troubled spiritual background. She would often tell her parents, "No matter where you come from or what was planned for you, God has the final say over your life." Years later, when people asked Ada what she learned from everything that has happened to her, she would say, "I learned that love is not enough if it's not built on truth and prayer. I love David, but I didn't pray enough about his family before marrying him. I learned that some problems can't be solved by human wisdom alone. You need God's intervention. I also learned that when you see red flags, don't just ignore them. just because you want something to work. God gives us discernment for a reason. But most importantly, I learned that no cause is stronger than God's love. No tradition or family pattern has to continue if you are willing to fight it with your faith. David would add, I learned that defending someone without investigating their truth is not love, it's enabling. I almost lost my wife and child because I was too proud to admit my mother might not be who I thought she was. Now, I teach my children, respect your elders, but don't follow them blindly, and always pray before making life decisions. Their marriage becomes stronger than ever, not because their problem was easy, but because they learned to face the truth together and trust God more than their own understanding. And whenever young couples come to them for advice, they will always end with this prayer: Lord, help us to see beyond the surface. Help us to choose partners whose families will build us up and not tear us down, and give us the courage to walk away from beautiful lies and choose difficult truths. Let our marriages be built on you, so that no weapon formed against us will prosper. Amen. The village of Ike-Iloro. Never forget the story of the bride who saw a mermaid sail on her wedding day. It became a warning that mothers still tell their daughters pretty faces and sweet words are not enough. Pray about the family you are marrying into, because some secrets don't surface until after the wedding. And every time there was a wedding in the village, someone would whisper, remember Ada and the river woman. Some prices are too high to pay for love, but they will also remember the end of the story. God's love is stronger than any curse. Faith wins over fear. And truth, no matter how painful, is always better than a beautiful lie. Thank you so much for watching, and please don't forget to share this story with your family and your friends whom I love to see them. Till I see you again in my next story. Goodbye.